for wherever you're tuning in from across the world. It is Monday and it is Porsche Madness Day as well. The Porsche Masters Cup here at Racing Club International. This is a series that I have been amped to get into since it was first announced. And as the name sort of suggests, Porsche Masters, we've got the GT3 cars, the GT4s, and of course the Cup cars, all in this Pro Split racing on the same circuit in their relevant splits. And we are here at Circuit Paul Ricard for the opening first round. My name is George Smith, and I'm joined in the commentary box by Joshua Devonshire and, of course, Jake Coombs on the cams. Josh, how are you doing, dude? We haven't done some comms in a long time.
I know it's been a good while. I think the last time was, I believe it was a Spa event a good few months back. But yeah, I am doing absolutely quite okay. Just very happy to be back in the box and for, as you said, an entirely new championship first round, and it's looking to be an absolute corker.
It really is. I mean, it's going to be complete chaos out on the circuit in terms of just people trying to get their track position established. Of course, we're still in free practice now. Drivers allowed to finish up their warm-ups and their final setup tweaks before we go over to the qualification session, which is a little bit different. It's a little bit longer than we normally run here. And that, of course, is to allow each of the classes a fair time to get out on the circuit. They actually each get a little bit of a shorter time. They each get 10 minutes. So we've got a 30-minute quali session. The GT4s will start off. They get the first 10-minute slot. Then they peel into the pit box, and the Cup cars will go out onto the circuit. They finish up from minutes 11 to sort of 20. And then the final quali session will be reserved for those big bad boy GT3s. This is going to be an absolute crack. And of course, lots of familiar names, lots of new entries as well. I'm so excited to get back and doing some Monday night casting for Racing Club International, of course, in partnership with Race Department, AK Informatica, and Raceface Speed Lab. Sim Racing GP, of course, the new platform from Race Department that you guys need to go and check out if you want to get a little fix of your daily races. This is going to be so good. I am stoked to see what the drivers have. I mean, of course, during the pre-qualification round, we got to see a little hint at some of the drivers' pace. And, looking at those sheets, I think that this is going to be an absolute cracker.
Absolutely, less than a second, but well, just over a second between the top three, and from at least from practice times right now, from third place all the way down to eighth, again, less than a second. So it's gonna be fairly bunched up, and obviously we've got a fair spread of categories and skill groups and driver classes as well. Obviously, we've had the three classes, the GT3s, the Cup cars, and the GT4s, and a good range of drivers in those machines as well. So traffic's going to be, with a 75-minute race, traffic is going to be a key factor, especially for the leading GT3s. And as you say, it's going to be interesting to see exactly where this one pans out.
I'm looking forward to just seeing how they handle themselves. Of course, Paul Ricard, a really nice wide circuit, so plenty of opportunities to overtake, plenty of opportunities to make mistakes, and of course, track limits, the name of the game. You've got to make sure that you don't get one of those infamous drive-through penalties. It'll put you way down the order. So only 10 seconds or so left of the timed free practice session. Drivers out on the circuit will then be sent off to that quali, and then we get to begin and see just what everybody's got for us installed tonight. So, Josh, I think this is going to be a really good race. I'm excited. I love, Paul Ricard, maybe not one of my favorite circuits to drive, but when it comes to spectating races and getting to watch some side-by-side action, this really does allow for that sort of limit to be pushed.
Oh, absolutely. Obviously, key factors you guys can see on the track map right now. A key element of this track is, of course, the Mistral Straight. It's so long. I think it's safe to say it is the longest, if not one of the longest straights in the game. And it's going to, with these classes of cars, it's going to test their top ends, and it's going to be more than just passing on the corners. It's going to be as good an exit that you can get out of the little chicane that leads onto the straight. That's going to decide a lot of positioning, I think. And even in qualifying, if you can get a slipstream down there, then that can gain you another couple of tenths. And given the field right now, P2 only half a second behind, but then P3 and P4 just like a tenth of a second behind themselves respectively. That slipstream might be all it takes to gain or lose a position.
I mean, I think that's a good point indeed, is looking to see if you can align yourself to get a nice toe down that back stretch. You are right. Really is an incredibly long bit of tarmac, and you don't want to be out of position there. So maybe a little bit of mind games going down. You're going to try and get yourself set up to a place where you don't want to be the lead car out in your quali session, but at the same time, you don't want to risk not being able to set a lap time. And it's all in your hands at the moment as a driver, I suppose. You've got your own strategy, you know how you want to go, and just like that, Josh, we tick over to our quali session. So of course, drivers going to be allowed to their 10 minutes each per division to get themselves out. We're going to start off with the GT4 cars. They're going to be the guys that are going out for their first 10-minute session. I mean, 10 minutes around Paul Ricard is not a long time to get a quali lap in. Looking at Ty Jolly here in that 332 GT4 Cayman. Very much a fan of the paint scheme that comes out. And just for the viewers, just to let you know, I'm a big Porsche fan myself. I think maybe a little bit biased. So this time around, getting just multiple classes of Porsches, I'm in my element.
No, absolutely. I mean, as you said at the start, and as we've known for a long time, you know, you've been looking forward to this series for as you say, ever since it was announced. So, I mean, for me, Porsches, I respect them. I like them. I'm aware that they were once upon a time, if not still, you know, one of the quickest cars in the game, at least in GT3 spec, and I quite like the Cayman. But it's good seeing the Cup cars out as well. You don't see that every day. So, just like that, it's going to be quite a fun one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that they've socially distanced us. I was scared that you were going to go and say something bad about my favorite manufacturer there, but I think you're quite complimentary. So, you know, we're safe, and we're looking forward to seeing what these guys do. I mean, this is going to be a true challenge for a lot of drivers, not just about setting good times in quali, but of course managing those race conditions and then dealing with the different cars on the circuit. Of course, dealing with traffic, etc. There's a lot to play for. And you gotta time it. You gotta plan it right. You're gonna make sure that you know, you in the faster class, you're gonna make your overtakes safe. And for the guys in the other classes, it's all about just keeping it neat and tidy and being predictable and allowing the drivers that they're not going to be fighting up against to get through cleanly, so they don't lose time themselves.
No, absolutely. You don't want to be held up. As going back to the straight, obviously, if you do get behind someone on the straight and right towards the fast right hander at the end, you can lose all that time that you gained under any sort of slipstream conditions, and as you say, traffic is going to be a key factor.
So we're looking at that onboard, of course, from Jolly as he starts his first lap coming into turns 1 and 2. And of course, a lot of curb to be used here. This track is all about flow, all about momentum, and making sure that you carry yourself perfectly, setting yourself up for that long Mistral straight that we've talked about. Coming into hotel, Hi Jolly using a little bit of the curb, making sure not to invalidate his track limits as well. So just keeping himself within those timing markers. You can see them indicated normally by a little pop-up on the inside of the corner apex. And of course, you just want to keep your tires outside that, not run too wide, as he now makes that run down the Mistral straight. And this is a place in the GT4 cars where I guess you got a lot of you know, a lot of time and thinking to yourself. They don't have the best top end, of course. So for these guys, this is going to be a long portion of the track just in a straight line as they drag themselves down. And of course, Jolly, our lead GT4 driver at the moment, so we're going to stay with him for the duration of this first lap. Do a little bit of a track guide. Throws it for the right-hander of Cygnus, and has to stay inside. There's those little timing flaps that you do not want to run yourself over, do not want to invalidate as he goes through the double right-hander of Busset. Again, it's all about managing your entry, making sure that you're not over-braking, and capitalizing on the advantage that you can get from carrying momentum through the rest of the circuit. Out through that, he starts to enter into the final sector, sector 3. And this is, again, quite a tricky left-hander onto the brakes. A little bit off camber as well. Got to hug that inside apex before you slam down the anchors for the final hairpin-like DuPont. And then back onto that accelerator pedal once again as you rush towards the timing line. A first-time lap coming out for Jolly. We'll see what he can do. A 206.597 set up. Then we've seen that guys sort of hovering around the 204s in the first sessions of the pre-quali. So it'll be interesting to see where they stack up. Redford goes over the line just 8/10 slower, so he slots himself temporarily into second place. Make that third place as Van Aken in the number 420 jumps up. And Boardman Andy Boardman will set a 205.7 to take pole position temporarily in the GT4s, but it's going to be madness. There's going to be times coming in, Josh.
No, absolutely. As we see Kingston Lee coming in just over a tenth and a half quicker than Bobbin. We've got Baranowski going even quicker on top. No, actually, I think I'm reading the time sheet's wrong. Kingston Lee was almost three tenths quicker than Bodman, and Baranowski was the the plus 0.159, so just over a tenth and a half. And I think that is just about all of the Porsches that all the GT4s at least that have come around without invalidating the first lap. So for those that have invalidated, they will get another shot. There's still just under halfway left to go of this session of qualifying for these cars. And
that's right, Josh. I mean, they really do have to sort of time this out. You've only got a 10-minute allocation to get your time in. Once you get to that 20-minute mark on the qualifying time for the viewers at the top, that's then when the cup cars are going to start to come out. If you are on a hot lap, you are allowed to finish it, but you can't start a new lap after that timing sheet has hit 20 minutes. So a couple of cars, as you can see, indicated by the red numbers on their timing sheet, they've all got to set their times in the GT4 class. So Andy Boardman on board with him, making some moves during quali just to get himself through. And of course, if you are a car that is out on a non-hot lap, you're going to be making space for drivers, as you would want that done for you.
No, absolutely. It's worth saying as well that Boardman was 0.8 of a second up on his delta before he got caught by traffic, and that's exactly what we were just talking about there. You can gain so much speed and time, but then lose it at the next corner just by being caught behind a slower car. And he is heading towards the line now to complete his second lap. Is he going to be quicker? According to my delta, that is going to be a yes, and that will put him on provisional P1, only just over a tenth quicker than Bodman. But as soon as I say that, was it Kuzma has just gone barely faster, less than a tenth faster than Bodman, almost right as Bodman finishes his flying lap, and he's only going to have enough time now, really, for realistically one or two more.
I mean, a 205.277 coming out for Kuzma. And that is certainly a nice time. But Boardman will be looking at those couple of hundredths and thinking to himself that there's more for him to find. He was caught up in traffic. We saw it. You noted it. And that means that the opportunities are going to come out, of course, Nico Kuzma in this number 7, yellow and black livery with a little accent to white. I think it all works out. Are those white rims on that GT4 as well? I mean, often I'm not a big fan of white rims on a race car, but he's got the accented yellow, and you know, if he's going to put it out in pole position for the GT4s, then he's allowed to paint it whatever color he likes, Josh.
No, absolutely. We've seen some absolutely amazing color schemes in the past. Obviously, it's great that the game gives you the opportunity to very quickly jump in and kind of personalize a car and make it yours, or choose from the real world ones as well, which I see a couple in the pit lane at least that are adorned with those particular colors, and it's going to be a very colourful grid when the race starts, it must be said. Looking at timing sheets, Baranowski is currently up on his time, and so is Andrew Pike. And I don't know if they're going to be in with a shout of... Actually, they might be in a shout with of a top 3 position if they can keep this going. So only a few more turns to go for Andrew Pike. And let's see if he can keep that delta going.
This is the time that you do have to dig deep, get those times in. As that timing sheet ticks down, the opportunities to set your lap time in the GT4s come to a close, and this is where you really want to be the person that trumps the time, gets yourself a good start. Of course, it's a long race. You've got plenty of time to make up positions. Pike going over the line will jump up to a provisional P3 for his class to start, and that's a really nice lap coming out from Andrew Pike, a 205.430 on the clock. He'll be chuffed with that, and I think he might even be getting himself an extra opportunity across the line before the 20-minute mark, so he's going to have another stab at this. And as you can see, drivers that are not out on the circuit, they've got the little pit indicator next to them. If they aren't going to better their time, they will be jumping into the pit box. If they've got the opportunity to better it, they haven't invalidated their lap, they'll be finishing it off. And from the 20-minute mark onwards, we'll start to see the cup cars coming out. So there was our provisional P3 jumping into the pit box. Of course, he wasn't going to better his time, and I think he was too worried about that clock ticking down. Zhou Tang hasn't yet set a lap time, so this is going to be critical for him to do. He shouldn't get caught up by the Cup cars at this phase. They will have started to leave the pit box, I believe. And for Zhou Tang, going to be going down that Mistral straight and trying to get a valid lap in.
Absolutely, it's his kind of last chance. Then I think he was just lucky enough to not invalidate that one, actually going wide through there. But it's still on for him, and we will see exactly. Oh, for her, sorry, I made a bit of a slip up with the name there. But yeah, hopefully that hasn't invalidated the time. I don't think it will have, and we're coming towards the end of the lap now, and we'll see exactly where that puts Zoe out.
Zoe, at the moment, needs to get this lap in. And again, big fan of the liveries being painted up here. We talked about some liveries coming down. Do like the metallic pink being adorned on this race car. And coming down to the line, going over the line with a, provisional P10 for them. So very good final lap to get in, especially when the clock was ticking down. And these are the wee beasts that, I had a good taste for. I enjoy the GT3 Cup car races that often get put on. They are wild beasts to try and tame. And at this stage, this is now the opportunity to shine out on the circuit, looking at Atkin Akkar's number 32. Again, it's all about just getting your first lap, getting those tires and brakes up to temperature, and then trying to bang in a flyer and see what you can do. They will probably have the same sort of number of laps. There's not too much difference in their timing. Of course, slightly slower than the GT, or slightly quicker, should I say, than the GT4s. The Cup cars and the GT3s, those two classes are probably the closest together on the field. On board with a car then, who should be setting their first flying lap, and we'll start to see where their times measure up, Josh.
No, absolutely. I think we were saying just before we actually went live about the straight line speed of these cars, and that normally with no BOP, that the Cup cars are actually, did you say they were faster in a straight line than the GT3s?
I think when it comes down to the Mistral Straight, they are. I think the restrictor that's been applied, the 20% here, will possibly invalidate those top ends, but it would be interesting to see just where they stack up. I think without the restrictor, they are quicker than the GT3s.
Yeah, it's going to be, that does make this qualifying session even more interesting, just seeing how far these guys can push these cars. And I suppose the proof of the pudding will be in the final lap times. Obviously, looking at the practice sessions, we're not expecting these cars to be on pace with the GT3s, but you can't expect that because they are a different class entirely. So 3 classes on the grid, and it doesn't get much more interesting than that.
I mean, the big difference, them having no traction control, they've still got the ABS, but that means that you have to be a little bit more gentle, a little bit of a ballerina on the right pedal, making sure that you don't just wing it and zip it, let the back end overtake the front. It's all about throttle control in them and making sure you can use that power in a controllable way. First gear in these, absolutely deadly. So it'll be interesting to see. I think lots of the time, just going down to second gear, you've got the torque to get out of it. But maybe coming here into the final corner of DuPont, they might have a shift down, but I think they just hold it in second gear. Yeah, they do. And back onto that loud pedal. Let's see what a car can do in that number 32. Hopefully has not invalidated. He will do a 158.5 and take the temporary pole position. But of course, with drivers behind him in tow, we'll see that suddenly get shifted up in Shane Sundstrom with a 157.7, just 200ths ahead of Ertan. Will temporarily sit in pole for the Cup cars. And plenty still to come through. Helicalio with a 157.6. James Parker, of course, in that 888 Coach Dave Academy car. He will do a 157.024. And of course, we've got the infamous Mike Noble, the man who knows the most about Cup cars. Will be interesting to see where he goes. If he doesn't get pole, for his class. He'll be upset, and temporarily a little bit of upsetness comes in as he's 900ths then behind Parker, a 157.1, but still opportunity to improve that.
No, absolutely. Still 5 minutes of the session to go, so we're only halfway through. And considering that we've done one flying lap and one out lap, that is in theory 2 or 3 more laps left. So plenty, well, not plenty of time, but some time and opportunities to try and dig a bit deeper and find that extra pace. As we're seeing Mikael Sundström at the moment, they're coming down towards the end of the straight, and he's currently 7/10 up. So he's looking, if he can keep this pace up, he's looking at a potential getting back with it easily within the top 3, but potentially a pole as well if he can keep this pace up. And it looks like he's lost a fair bit of time. He's only 4/10 up on his delta now, but still time, a little bit of a slide, hitting the curb a little too hard there. And as you said before, George, these cars have no traction control, so you want to kind of drive them right on, or you want to drive any car on the limit, but these ones especially, you want just a little bit of slip without too much, and these things can and they will bite if you do not respect them. And a little bit of a bad exit coming out of DuPont. He lost another 10th, and he is going to improve on his time. That will put him provisionally into P3, exactly 4 tenths of a second behind the leader. But everyone else is also finishing their laps as well.
I suppose as the track and the qualifying progresses, all of these cars are laying down rubber and grip for the classes to follow. So you'd expect them to sort of have slightly better conditions than what the GT4s would have had, and the GT3s are going to come out on a track that has a little bit more grip laid down into it. Mike Noble over the line in a Secchi. Does he manage to improve his time? He does not. So he stays in second place. So 157.060 comes out for him. So he's not going to go and best up James Parker just yet. And both of those drivers, absolute masters of the sim racing community. So it'll be good to see a little head-to-head between Parker and Noble. I've been looking for that my entire life since watching Porsche Cup Series. So I'm glad to see both of them in this. And it's going to be such a beast. I suppose also, Josh, got to consider that it's a bit of a balancing act, right? You want to go for the downforce game for the corners, but you don't want the drag for the Mistral straight. So I guess it's a little bit tempting to make yourself a little bit quicker down there. But then, of course, you're going to unstabilize your car through the fast portions of the circuit. And, of course, that's not going to work out brilliantly for you. Of course, James Parker, he can kind of knows his setups, doesn't he? So I would be interested to see just how this one pans out, and I'd love to know how some of these drivers have set their cars up.
Oh, absolutely. I think every setup on every track comes down to personal preference as well. You can take a professional's setup and you just find that it doesn't quite work for yourself and make a few changes. So I have no doubt, especially at this level, that these drivers have a setup that they are, for the most part, happy with. But yeah, it's a different philosophies is definitely an interesting thing to think about. I saw John McCauley going provisional P1, just coming kind of out of nowhere as we were talking there, a full 2/10 faster than James Parker. I was just infatuated by the team name there. The hashtag
the blame Mike Jones. I love it. I love it. And I will never not blame Mike Jones. But Joe McCauley, again, a little name that I guess slipped under my radar when I was calling out Noble and Parker, because of course McCauley, another one of those. So, if I can add a little extra bull into the ring, I'm going to do it every time. And Joe McCauley might just be that. So Mike Noble will better his time, slots himself into second place ahead of Parker. But that's still not quite good enough to get the pole position in class. Of course, the GT3s are going to be the cars that are going to be actually starting up at the front of the order. But we've only got 46 seconds left of this quali session for the Cup cars. And all these drivers out on circuit will be setting their very final times if they have not crossed that start-finish straight.
Absolutely. It's worth saying as well that Mike Noble has just entered onto the Mistral straight at the 10th of a second up, and I think we might have a chance of seeing exactly what kind of downforce settings we're looking at here. And actually, I suppose without a comparison, we're only comparing him to himself, so I scratch what I just said. It'd be interesting to see if there's any other cars around him, but we do know, Parker has. You're on about that battle between Parker and Noble, by the way, George. We know that they are very much on pace with each other, and where Parker is starting provisionally in P3, almost a tenth behind Noble. I think in the race that might prove to be very different. So it's going to be three very quick guys at the front, as we're seeing Noble still a tenth up, keep it very consistent, and it
I mean,
seems
this is looking like a good lap, Josh. This is looking like a good lap for him, isn't it?
yeah, this is a potential pole lap very easily. It's again hovering around that 10th. It hasn't changed throughout most of the lap, and even coming out of DuPont, still a 10th up. It's dropping, and I don't know if it's going to quite be enough. We'll find out in just a moment. And I don't. That's not enough, is it? He's still two.
It's not enough. He found an extra 100th out there, but Joe McCauley is going to take that small victory in quali as we now begin the big GT3 class. Of course, these are the aero beasts. They've got a lot more aero. They've got a lot more setup tweaks than both the GT3s and the GT4s. So I'm interested to see just how they do. We still do have a cup car out here, and that's Atakan Akar in that number 32. He's trying to get his final lap in here, just coming out through Cygnus, going in through Bruxelles. He needs to be careful that he doesn't get caught up by those GT3s. I mean, he's well past his timing allowance here, as far as I understand. Josh?
No, absolutely. I know there was one GT4 that was out fairly late as well, and I'm not sure if they're allowed to be out this late. Obviously, that's something for the stewards to decide, but so far he's not in anybody's way, luckily. And
I mean, they'll still be doing their first out lap at this point. They'll be banging in their flyer, so I don't think he gets in the way of anything. But it all comes down to did he cross the line when his time was allowed? But now looking at Cody Pride, he will be our GT3 man to take us through a lap. And of course, these guys will be taking over those pole sitting times on the left side. But everybody is racing in class, so it's a bit irrelevant into where the GT4s or the Cup cars have gone. If you're in a GT3, you're racing in a GT3 championship, just on the same circuit.
No, absolutely. It's basically 3 different races happening at once, but that's what makes it extra spicy, for lack of a better word. But yeah, obviously with these cars, we are expecting to be the fastest. As George said earlier, the track is now somewhat rubbered in, and this is just going to be the quickest laps of the day, I would imagine.
So just a word from our stewards there. They are monitoring all the timing laps. Of course, live stewards will be responsible for making sure that drivers behave themselves in the race, but also for monitoring those time allowances. And it looked like a car was well within his time limits. Otherwise, we would have been notified if he had exceeded it. So we haven't seen the little red flag waving as Pride wrestles it out through Cygnus and just keeps it within the timing line. So he will be, oh man, to see who gets, Bruxelles looking all kinds of scary for him. All about car control coming into that very difficult double right-hander. If you find yourself offline, it can just go awfully wrong from there.
Yeah, it seems to be one of those corners that if you start going offline, it kind of brings you offline for the next 2 or 3 corners afterwards. So it's quite vital that you get that correct. It kind of reminds me a lot of Maggots and Beckett's at Silverstone. It's much kind of the same thing as we see in Cody Pride. Rounding DuPont, the final turn, heading towards the line to set the first flying lap. Obviously had a little bit of a sketch moment, but that is going to obviously be with the first GT3 across the line. It is still going to be provisional P1, still 2 tenths faster, but as I say that, Rommel will cross the line in provisional P1, a full 10th quicker. And we're going to start seeing the order change a fair bit, I would imagine, as we see more cars cross the line.
So Rommel, like you said, up into provisional P1, just a 10th ahead of Pride. Sky, 3 tenths off of Rommel. Burgess, also hovering around that 3 tenths mark, almost 4 tenths off. But this is going to be an intense race. Just looking at quali, it's been quite fun to just go through the different car classes and get them, a 10-minute allocated time out on the circuit. circuit with all the pressure around them, getting their times in, and everybody's done a fantastic job so far. I think we're in for a treat of a race as we just get to that 5-minute mark, and that will be the halfway mark for the GT3s to just note that they are now, time is of the essence. You're doing 154s, you got 5 minutes. If you are just starting a lap, you've maybe got 2 laps ahead of you, and if you're midway through, you might squeeze an extra 1 in. Like we said, that grip level does improve with all the cars out on the circuit. The more cars, the more rubber, and these guys are trying to maximize off that grip that they're getting in these GT3s.
Absolutely. Obviously, trying to maximize the downforce, maximize the mechanical grip, and just eke out as much as you can. Obviously, within a qualifying lap, it is basically a hot lap with traffic, as we're on board with Dual Sky at the moment. The number 601 coming around the final turn. They are currently very much up on their time. This is going to be an absolute flyer. Lost time out of DuPont, but I don't think it's going to matter too much. And I think that is going to be provisional pole, but only just. It's lucky to be very, 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 very close within the top 3, hell, even the top 5 of this particular class.
A big shout out to our YouTube chat, of course, all joining us today as we get to the final closing stages of the quali session. We've seen the GT4s go out, we've seen the Cup cars, and now we're just about to wrap up with the GT3s. And then it is race time with all of these beasts out on the circuit. Monday Madness, as I like to call it in my head, or as it's officially named, the Porsche Masters Cup. This is going to be a great little series, and every Monday for the next couple of Mondays we will be here and doing exactly the same thing. We get to see the quali session for each of them. And I quite like that. You know, it's not something that's decided before the race. It's something, or should I say, something that we don't get to broadcast. I think it adds a little element that we like to cover the quali sides, but this is a little bit different, of course, with each of them just getting a little 10-minute slot for 3 car slots or car divisions. It's completely I'm completely in my elements. I love it. I love the sounds of Porsches. I love the look of Porsches. And Josh, I love the sound of your lovely voice next to me in the comms box.
Thank you so much. I had to call the Porsches, at least, you know, you were talking about kind of what we call call this event in our heads. I was calling it the event for the cars with the engines in funny places.
I mean, yes, I guess. I can completely accept that, to be honest. Jules Sky now, number 601, trying to better their time, diving towards the line, try and put a little bit more distance between themselves and Rommel, and that will not quite be the best lap that they wanted to get in. They've got 2 minutes still to get out. Cody Pride for PPR Esports still wants to try and better their time too, and to be honest, it was there, the tenths, the hundredths. It's all about those subtle mistakes in the apexes, being a bit brave towards the end of this Mistral straight, throwing it into Cygnus, and just hoping you can stick it, making sure you don't run too wide and invalidating it. But when we get to race time, this straight is going to be crazy. We have not seen too many drag tactics of people trying to get a tow along here. Everybody's been pretty spaced out coming down here, and I think, well, there we go. We talked about the danger of Cygnus, and Cody Pride having a big scare moment, keeps it away from the barriers too far. A little onboard replay here as we see what happens. Comes in, a little bit of curb. Oh, yeah, the tank slapper, and Cody Pride goes sliding to a halt, just a little touch onto those tire barriers.
No, absolutely, and this is going back to the whole engines in funny places. That's kind of going to be a key part of how these cars drive. It's that one, and this is something the Cup drivers also have to bear in mind as well. That once the back end starts sliding, it's very, very easily for that engine to act as kind of like a pendulum. You've got all that weight over the rear tires, which is very, very grippy. A lot of mechanical grip until there isn't, and it's very easily sent around, as Cody's just demonstrated to us just there. And he's not going to get the time to get another lap in, so he's going to have to settle for P3 at best. But let's see what the other drivers can put out. Quarantine in the 666 coming around the final turn now. again, up on the delta. Is it going to be enough? I know I say that way too much, but it has been a very tense session, and it is. That will take P3 from Cody Pride. And there's not really much opportunity.
Also manages to get another lap time in there as well as the clock ticked down with 8 seconds to go. So Quarantine Burgess will get another hot lap in here as long as the lap is not invalidated. This one will also count. So maybe the opportunity to stick it to Rommel, just being 900ths off the pace, that sits in your mind going, well, I could possibly do that. But temporarily, Jules Sky will sit up at the top with a 154.021, and it will be the chase. Rommel and Burgess both out on track and still able to finish these laps.
Burgess being one to watch at the moment has been up on their delta since crossing the line, essentially. Still a 10th up, but a 10th is going to be enough for a provisional pole. But that at one point, that timer was at a full half a second up, so there is time in there somewhere. This is going to be a fast lap. Compared to Rommel's time at the moment, to give you guys an update, Rommel is currently almost 2/10 down. So, just about kept it going, but has lost all of that time. I was just saying that they had made up, and oh wow.
And maybe a bit of a down adjustment going down in the pit box between firing another lap in, or just adapting to maybe being a little bit braver in through that right-hander. But we've seen how difficult that can be, and it needs to be sort of ironed out, I guess, in your quali session. You've got the opportunity to go big or go home here, but in a race, you don't want to be out of control of your car through that right-hander. You don't want to risk invalidating your lap. Lucas Rommel, as they approach DuPont, this will be the decider to see where they start, in first or second. And it looks like Rommel going to be peeling into the pit box. So Jules Sky is going to start in pole in that 601 in the GT3s. And that was an intense quali session coming in. A 10 minutes that feels like it's aged me a couple of years.
Absolutely, and the top four very, very tightly bunched together, less than just over a 10th of a second separating everyone. And we all know what Cody was on a very quick lap themselves before just losing it at the back end of the straightaway there. And that is currently the running order, or the qualifying order, now that the session is finished for the GT3s. And it's going to be a really, really, really fun race, as you keep saying, George.
It is indeed. So drivers now getting some time to have a bit of a reset, make sure they get their pit crew to ensure that they've got the correct setup loaded for the race. And as far as I understand, Josh, we do not have a mandatory stop in this race. So you've got to make sure that you've correctly got yourself into a position where you can sit to the end of the race without needing to go and make changes that other drivers don't need to do, because that just costs you time.
No, absolutely. It's a lot of the time we see these mandatory stops, and that opens up a lot of avenues for different strategies. But as you said, this is going to be more of a straight out kind of keep your nose clean, keep out of trouble, and keep the car from start to end as best as you can. And that's going to be very interesting as we start seeing the tire drop off, especially because it's an hour and a quarter, so a 75-minute race. It's a long time. Well, it's fairly longish time to keep these tires alive whilst keeping the pace. So it's kind of, do you burn the rubber up at the start of the race and struggle towards the end and hope that you've made enough of a gap, or do you drive conservatively from start to finish but lose the time, but hope that the consistency sees you right? There's a lot of ways to approach this.
This is true. Maybe people strategizing that that tire drop off is just going to be too risky going in for the pits. Maybe fuel wise they're going to have to decide to go in and put some fuel in for themselves. But there's no mandatory requirement, which means that it's freely up to the teams and the drivers for them to decide what they want to do. Just under 5 minutes until we get ourselves down to that green flag to begin this 75-minute race, or an hour and 15 for those of you that prefer it that way. This is going to be a goodie. I see bright skies outside too. No rain coming down. The track temperature of 29 degrees. So it's going to be pretty hot. It's going to be difficult to manage those tire sets, Josh.
No, absolutely. It's quite, as you said, it's quite warm out there. It's going to get quite nice and toasty. And yeah, it's just a case of how delicate can you be, how conservative can you be, and going back to the topic of fuel, from what I understand, and I don't know if this has been fixed with an update or whether the BOP has changed, but from what I understand, isn't the Porsche a fairly thirsty beast as well? So I can imagine the GT3s might even have to start thinking about fuel saving.
I've not driven on Paul Ricard for a 75-minute race in a Porsche since the new updates. And I think that's up for consideration for sure. Of course, the Cup cars running with that 20% restrictor on them. So that will limit that top end side down the Mistral Straight. But again, all the pit strategies are in the hands of the drivers. If you do have a contact early on, you get damage, you're going to be forced to go into the pits, or you're going to be driving around with a very damaged car. And on a track like Paul Ricard, not something that you want to do. It is going to be a crazy race in the next couple of minutes. Of course, our drivers will be following the in-game formation lap for the start. So, time for us to still chat a little bit of shop before we get underway. But a beautiful sight it will be to see all of these classes on the track at the same time. Of course, racing in their separate divisions. They've all completed their qualification. And, now it's time to just get the thinking caps on, get focused, and make sure that you have a clean opening start. Otherwise, it can go from bad to worse, can't it, Josh?
No, absolutely. This is one of those tracks where if you start losing positions at the start, that momentum of loss can just continue and spiral, especially if you find yourself in a bad mindset. So I think the next 2 minutes or so are going to be brushing off pre-race nerves, a chance to grab a drink and plenty of chance to drink it as we do the formation lap down the Mistral Straight as well. It's more than enough time to reach down beside you, grab a cup of tea, and have a big old sip of that as you're driving down that.
How very British of you, Josh. A little cup of tea. I saw you place your order with the team in the back there. I didn't see you order me a cup of tea, but maybe next week we'll be on that level where we can have tea together.
That would be absolutely amazing. And no, it is just genuinely super, super exciting to see exactly what we're going to wind up with. So I'm not, I am one for this. I'm a bugger. I do this every single race. But George, what is your predictions for the race so far?
I mean, I've actually never been able to spectate a race like this with the three different types of Porsches that we have offered in ACC. 41 cars on the grid. So that's 41 opportunities for me to make the wrong prediction. But as things stand, I think I'm very interested to see how the Cup cars go. I'm a big Cup car fan. But at the same time, the GT3s are going to be amazing. And a big shout out to all the GT4 drivers as well. We know that car class doesn't get enough love. And it's nice to see them on our stream today. So big shout out really to all of our drivers. But Josh, I mean, if you're asking me the questions, you've obviously got some insight and some predictions to make yourself.
No, absolutely. I have a feeling from what we've seen in qualifying, the top four for the GT3s is going to be incredibly close. We've seen in the past, we're starting in P4. We've seen in the past exactly what Cody Pride is capable of. And those four cars are going to be very, very tightly packed, but I still can't really say anything in terms of predictions too much because it's so dependent on those first couple of laps. And all I do know is that I'm expecting some changing of positions and maybe a few upsets towards the end. As we see Paul Reynolds not on the grid, I wonder if something's happened there. I know that we've had problems in the past of in other series where cars have teleported to pit, so I wonder if that's what's happened there, or if they just simply didn't hit drive in time, because that is also a possibility as well. But it looks like they'll be starting from the pit lane. I'm looking at the in-game chat on my screen as well, and there is a very quick oops from Reynolds there, so I have a feeling it is the latter, just forgetting to hit the drive button, and that will have just compromised their race a little bit.
It happens. It happens to the best of us. It's something that you don't do too many times after doing it, and unfortunately, that's not the nicest way to start off the opening round. And of course, the Porsche Masters Cup is what we are bringing you here today. Paul Ricard, a great circuit for overtaking. A great place for us to start to see just how all of these cars measure up against each other, and of course the drivers taking part in the series. Big shout out to them, and to you guys at home watching on YouTube. We really do appreciate all the love and support that you bring through, the likes, the subscribes. It all makes the big racing wheel turn as our drivers start to make their way down the Mistral Straight at the slowest that they will be going down this long straight. Josh?
No, absolutely. And as I was saying before, it's plenty of time to just grab a drink and just have a think about kind of what your strategy is going to be. Obviously, formation laps are usually very slow paced and offer time for reflection, but I think none more so than Paul Ricard. And God, to be a GT4 right now, just looking ahead and seeing all those cars ahead of you, it's kind of a scary thought when you come to think of it. There's some very, very quick cars ahead of you in that case, and so riding on board with Nico Charisma, you kind of just see what I mean. You see just a sea of Porsches, especially as the cars start to part there. You look down the center of the rows of cars, and there's just so much going on, and there's so much energy. It's all just building up, and we're still not quite at the end. Our lead driver just finally coming to the end of the straight now, so it just goes to show just how long it actually is. And that will be Rommel
I think for a lot of these drivers as well, not being right up at the front end of the stick for the opening laps, not the worst. We talked about it in quali. That toe that you can get in the slipstream down the Mistral Straight is absolutely monumental. And for the drivers here today, it's all about making sure that you set yourself up for the right opportunities at the right time. And they start to make their way down into Sector 3 and to get themselves into formation for our start. Of course, they start 2 by 2. As Jesse Lee likes to say, 2 by 2, as far as I can see. This is the view that I want to see. Big Porsche fan. If Porsche ever wants to hit me up, I will promote their cars on my Twitter. I'll drive around in any one of these beasts. Just hit me up. But yeah, I mean, Josh, I'm excited. Round 1, we've got a lot of action ahead of us for the forthcoming week. So my Monday calendars have been absolutely cleared.
Absolutely, and I think mine too, for absolutely certain. As we're about to start the race, Jules Sky falling a little bit behind there, but the will equalize out. The game obviously does allow the drivers to get into position and start the 70 km/h rolling start, and we're about to go green.
We are about to go green, waiting for our race director to make that call. And green, 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 it is. GT3s, GT4s, and Cup cars all on the circuit. The Porsche Masters Cup Round 1 at Paul Ricard is underway, and it's all about making sure that you have a clean opening lap and the forthcoming laps as well. But Jules Sky, with a great start off the bat, going to force Rommel and Burgess to be the fighters in that battle behind. And I mean, it is just a train of Porsches behind them.
Absolutely. And looks like there's been a little bit of position kind of jostling and changing a little bit at the start there. I saw Pride get a very, very good start, but hasn't quite been able to make anything stick. As we're seeing Alexander Shinchov now, or Shinov, I'm so sorry, I'm terrible with names, but still entering onto the Mistral Straight now. And are we going to see any of that slipstream effect? Is it so early in the race? Are the drivers going to want to belt some of the tyres? I think we're going to just a little bit, as we see Burgess making a move onto Rommel, but going 3 wide down the Mistral Straight as Cody Pride fancies a look. And I believe that is also for sure as well. Trying to make it 4 wide. He's having to think about it. He has the slipstream from Cody Pride going 3 wide into the fast right-hander at the end of the track there. Cody Pride being pushed a little bit wide, just has to kind of avoid spinning the car. I believe that's 2 of the Porsches behind almost making contact. Looks like the Saturday it was fairly uneventful, but that was had the potential to be quite a big accident.
Oh, I mean that is the type of racing that we are going to expect to see here at, of course, the circuit. So much space and opportunity for cars to go alongside. You saw plenty of space being given, and for the Cup cars, it looks like Mike Noble has had a phenomenal start coming out. He's managed to get himself up ahead of the likes of Joe McCauley. James Parker, he's fallen back a couple of places, and it looks like Vita in the GT3 is also just dropped back a slight amount. He's currently sitting with a bunch of the Cup cars here, so out of position for a couple of drivers, but for the likes of Mike Noble, it seems to have gone okay for him.
Absolutely. I think we're watching a replay now. I was just about to say that there was a Porsche on the infield of DuPont, and I think that is exactly what happened there. Just had a little bit of help just getting around, and I mean, I know you want to steer quite a bit because it is quite a tight corner, but you don't want to steer quite that much, and that has just cost, I believe, who was that went around? That was, obviously, I don't have any of the information on screen at the moment, but Adam Banfield, that has just cost the number 3 car a fair few positions, and that will not be happy about that. As we see Cody Pride making a move onto Rommel again, getting the slipstream, getting a slight overspeed. The difference in speed, you can see it there, pulls out into the slipstream of Quarantine as well. And is it going to quite be enough? Is he going to be just not the braking? He is. He's going to hit that apex absolutely perfectly. A little bit of a wiggle, but just about makes that one stick. And that's exactly what that long straight is going to be about. This is going to... Nothing is set in stone when this is kind of the racing that we're going to be experiencing and expecting for the next hour and 10 minutes now. So,
I mean, you saw a car also just using that slipstream to get close to the likes of Panker, but in those Cup cars, maybe you have to be a little bit more held back at how you handle Cygnus, that right-hander, and just tucking back and waiting a little bit longer. Of course, an hour and 11 minutes on the clock for these drivers to get the work done in this opening round. You don't want to see silly mistakes. You don't want to see people putting themselves at risk, and you want to see them getting to the checkered flag. But that's all worked out for Jules Sky in that 601 because we were worried. We said, maybe starting in pole position, not always the greatest if you're going to open up to have the toe or allow for the toe behind you. But for Sky, it hasn't been the case. A great start coming out. Hasn't had too much pressure coming on. It's all onto Quarantine Burgess to try and chase down and get into that advantageous position. But for now, not going to be able to quite do that. It is going to be Noble versus McCauley in the GT3 Cup cars. Of course, if you want a little quick look at these cars and to spot the differences, they've got the headlights or the additional lighting on the front of them, those 4 little almost rally-like headlights coming through. And down the Mistral Straight, we will go onto the splitter cam from Joe McCauley's number 18, the Blame Mike Jones team, as they make their way down. And we can just see that there is a little bit of slipstream effect working out. Not going to be quite enough to have a look into the likes of Cygnus, but certainly using that advantage to the absolute maximum. Joe McCauley, who did start ahead of the likes of Noble, now just playing catch up as we look down the order as well into the GT4s. We'll see the likes of the 577 making a move on Valentine very early, pulling out of the slipstream there, but establishing that line that you want on the left side of the Mistral Straight so you can come across the apex for Cygnus, and that's going to be exactly what they're going to get done.
No, absolutely, just maximizing the best that you can do to take Cygnus, and as you say, it's just a case of carrying as much speed as you can and just trying to make a bit of a gap to the car ahead. And I imagine that is what Joe Sky will be trying to do to Burgess, just trying to break out of that slipstream range. As we see, that will be Stancio making a move onto Antonio Crady. Crady will be going defensive, going down into T1, and I think
he's outbraked himself there a little bit, but going to put himself onto the inside line. They are going to go side by side. They're going to go 3 cars wide. It looks like Caritas also going to see the mistake, going to try and put himself on at the inside for Hotel, giving each other room. The exit, though, is going to not quite go that same way. And very good driving coming out from all three of those cars, giving each other room, giving each other space, and making sure that they could have a fair on-track position. And now it's about just getting that Mistral straight down, seeing who can maximize on that slipstream. And they are quite a couple of car lengths off from one another, so I don't think this will be quite the position that they wanted to be, considering how close they were coming out of turn 2.
No, absolutely. And in with the GT4 leader now with Andrew Pike, and he's currently defending against Boardman. And we know from the other Monday championships, Boardman is very, very quick indeed, and he's kind of establishing that right on the bumper of the right at the back of the right on the back bumper of that Cayman. As we're entering onto the Missile Straight now, Boardman looking like he gets a slightly wider, possibly faster exit, and this is where it's going to be making our break. We see the car inching oh so closer. The closing speed definitely increasing, and that Porsche front is getting definitely bigger as we're pulling out very, very late under the slipstream, maximizing the entry speed, maximizing the closing speed as much as possible. And we've got to see
nice planning of that overtake as well from Boardman. Kind of bullied Pike in through the likes of Hotel and made sure that he could set himself up for the most important part, which is that back stretch was within that slipstream, and you saw him peel away. Interestingly enough as well, if you look at the track map on the right side, you can see those Cup cars keeping fairly well with the GT3s. Of course, the GT4s, contact coming in through the entry to Bruxelles, or the exit through Bruxelles. And a horrible re-entry as well there, going to collect another Cayman. Not what you want to see, Josh, and the stewards will be shaking their heads indeed.
Absolutely. I think that was Zoe Tang who got caught up in that one, and just completely unsighted. Obviously, when the cars are re-entering in front of you, it's not often all that easy to kind of see, predict what position or how they're going to re-enter. And yeah, it just looks like there's a bit of a helping hand there, and you see Zoe Tang coming around, tries to avoid, but then, yeah, not a whole lot that could be done in that situation from the perspective of the car that was already on the track, in my opinion. But we'll have to see exactly what is said about that one. As you said, the stewards will be shaking their head. That is something that I'd imagine would be looked into. And cutting all the way.
A bit of a dive almost from the other Porsche coming into that, causing that collision, which maybe could have just unsettled the 577, who it can happen. You kind of see red mist and you just want to get back on the circuit as quick as you can, but it's not going to be looked at very positively from the stewards. They don't want to see bad track re-entries, especially if you cause another collision with a car on track.
Oh, absolutely. And there is a drive-through penalty being given to the 191 as well, and not entirely certain what that was for. I wonder if it's in our notes. It is not currently, but I'm sure we'll find out sooner rather than later. And this is going to be interesting because the pit exit is kind of a little bit interesting at Paul Ricard. It kind of spits you out right onto the racing line heading down into T1, and there is cars behind the 191. Obviously, that's going to put them right into the Cup car territory. So
I think he's going to clear getting out. He's going to be overtaken by those Cup cars with that drive-through. So for the 191, at least comes out with some clean air. Doesn't have to show us what's going to happen when it comes out to the pit lane exit at Paul Ricard. And it's a big setback though at the end of the day, because it's not where you want to be. And for the Racing Line Motorsport team, that is going to be a big setback in the opening round. Still an hour and 4 minutes on the clock for positions to be made back up. Other drivers might have some unfortunate events as well. We know that track limits here can be so deadly. And unfortunately for some of these drivers, they are going to understand just why that hurts in a race like this.
Absolutely. The 577 also picking up a drive-through penalty for track limits. That did pop up on my screen as well. So already cars being stung by that, and we're just over 10 minutes in. So it's going to be as you say, George, it's going to be a key factor. Burgess catching right up to the back of Jules Sky, heading down into T1, and definitely within striking distance of a potential overtake attempt into going into one of the corners. But at this point, if you're Burgess, what do? Do you plan things ahead? Do you plan for the straight? Just braking a little bit later, just catching up a little bit more, closing that gap, and just trying to. Obviously, I can imagine that Burgess would be trying to plan ahead, just trying to figure out where the best place to pass would be. And I think we've seen a common trend with that. So it's just a case of being opportunistic. It's a case of just waiting for Sky to make a mistake, just kind of put the pressure on and just sort of see what happens. But all the while just trying to kind of keep your car under control as well. And this is where we might see a move.
Yeah, I think it's a good call that anywhere before the Mistral straights, if you get the move done, you're generally just a small car's length ahead, and then that toe comes down. Sky trying to not allow Burgess to sit in that slipstream, but might also be compromising their own straight line speed at the same time. But so far, worked out well for that 601, stays ahead of the 666 that we're riding on board with as they go through, but that's quite wide coming out from Sky, maybe hitting the inside apex, unsettling the car slightly, and has given some advantage back then to Burgess. Can Burgess have a look on the inside line? Not quite close enough, and that gap was closing down quickly. So just elects to sit behind the 601, keep the pressure on, force the mistake, I think was the advice that I would have given to your question there, Josh. And, just keep the heat dialed up to 11 and wait for the error from the driver in front.
No, absolutely. A couple of things to note, actually. Obviously, I'm not a steward, but and obviously you are allowed to try and break the slipstream on the straight, but is there a certain kind of limit as to what you can get away with before it's deemed moving unnecessarily too much down the straight? But as I say that, I also have noticed that Killian Ryan Meelan has also picked up a 5-second time penalty as well. I'm going to... Actually, I don't think I've seen him involved in any incidents so far, unless it was the involvement of turning around one of those GT3s earlier on in the race. So, for whatever reason, Killian does have a 5-second time penalty, and I'm sure we'll find out sooner rather than later.
So the steward's hard at work, making sure to keep everybody in tow, neat and tidy. Killian Ryan in that Side Max Motorsports 231. Side Max, of course, a team that is featured a lot in our Racing Club International events, and always good to see their drivers participating out here. The Coco Racing Team 666 of Quarantine Burgess, again, hasn't managed to get into that opportune overtaking position as they start to catch up to some GT4 cars. They're going to make sure that they are making these overtakes clean and tidy. The onus is on the faster class to make sure they get past fairly, and of course the predictability then remains on the GT4s. They need to make sure that they are putting themselves in a place that they are not throwing other drivers off, and they are catching up to these GT4s. And this traffic could change the way that this battle goes down, Josh.
No, absolutely. It's a fairly long race, and this isn't going to be the first time that we come across these guys as well. And so one of the GT4s just compromising Sky just a little bit there, and I might allow Burgess a little bit of breathing space and time to kind of close up the gap. And closing the back gap, they are also slightly, but almost losing it a little bit, getting a little squirrely through the second to last corner. We're coming through DuPont, right on the back of the 601 Porsche. And I also, it is in the notes I've been informed that Killian Ryan Meelan's time penalty came from, that was an incident in T1, I believe it was, involving car 231 and car 86. A forceful overtaking didn't give back the position. So, seems like Killian just forced them a little bit wide there and took the time penalty for that. As you see, just a look up and just, it's so tight in between those GT4s, and Sky being held just a little bit, and that is going to put potentially a car between the two. But it's having to go on the inside, narrowly avoiding that Cayman. And
I love it. Just decide to split the Cayman, one on the left, one on the right, and the GTGs continue on. And making sure to get through neat and tidy. Some good sportsmanship being shown off from the GT4s as well, holding their line, staying where they need to be, and just allowing the quicker classes and, of course, the race leaders in the GT3 cars to get through. Great bits of sportsmanship, and that's what we want to see in these kind of races, isn't it, Josh?
No, absolutely. Obviously, if you're in the slower cars at this point, you kind of have to bear in mind, that these guys are coming through at a much, much quicker pace. And it's got to be said as well, Cody Pride catching up to the top two as well. I was to see Matthew Kingston Lee. I believe he is currently defending against, unless he actually got the move just done. I was just checking out my timing sheets as well. There's so much going on at the moment. Uh, Stefan Van Aken, another with a 5-second time penalty. And that's the car number 420. So I'm just going to check the notes really quickly. And there is in the notes a 5-second with aggressive overtake with contact. So I imagine that might actually be the incident that we saw earlier on, but that might not be the case.
I mean, the stewards have way more eyes than us in their replay features. We can completely trust what they're saying. They've looked into it, and it's nice to have the team alongside us. And of course, Jake doing our lovely camera work, bringing us all the action and trying to keep up with what we said was going to be madness, and it has not under-promised just yet. Complete chaos at places, but controlled chaos, like a hurricane on a leash.
Absolutely, and that is the...
Oh, side by side are protagonist and antagonist in the lead for the GT3s. Up the inside, the 666 will go, and it looks like getting caught out there is Sky behind that Cayman, just slightly picking the wrong line, ever so slightly, but it is the Mistral Straight, and this is where things can change up. Sky right in that slipstream now, able to pull out early and stay on the preferred side of the circuit coming into the exit here of Cygnus. So only halfway gone. It's a straight up drag race. We start to see whose arrow is working out. It does look like the 601 just has a little bit more, maybe an exit coming into Mistral, but there's GT4s as well in front. The traffic is still there. And of course, they need to get through this cleanly. Beautiful bits of driving coming in from these drivers. What a masterclass. What a race coming in. And the door left slightly open then from Sky Burgess up the inside for the double right-hander. And I think we do see a slight shift in the lead once again. So regardless of that Mistral advantage, Quarantine Burgess, great bit of driving to just hold it up the inside and force the 601 to have to yield that position out again.
No, absolutely. And again, Cody Pride coming in and catching up relatively quickly themselves. And Cody got held up a little bit in T1 by one of the GT4s. And already you see how quickly that gap is closing. GT4 on their inside, though, so compromising their line. But I don't think that's going to stop the fight for the lead at all, with Burgess taking that P1 position. That's Killian Ryan Meenan losing position. Actually, no, he's caught up to the back of Mark Whitford, sorry. He's not lost position at all. In fact, he might be looking to gain it. And gain it he needs to do. He needs to pull that gap up. Obviously, he has that extra time that will be added to the end of his race, unless for some reason he has to make some kind of a stop. And Ataberk Ertan is also within striking distance of Killian as well. So, bit of a three-car train going on. This is very, very tightly packed and could be absolutely anyone. So fight for the lead. There's a bit of an update there. That is Joe Sky, who actually got hit by, I believe, that was one of the GT4s. I think that was Zoe again, but that's not what you want to see. That was such a close battle, and we're seeing a replay now, and I just caught that on my screen watching for the battle for the lead. Burgess just pulls up right up to the back of the pink Cayman. Sky sees a gap, and Cayman peels off and just clips on the inside. Cody Pride having to take avoiding action as well, almost getting tangled up themselves, and that means that Sky then also has to wait to rejoin safely, and that's just set them so far back.
Oh, that is a big upset. I mean, it was a slight mistake coming out from that Cayman coming in, the contact coming down, and we fight on a knife's blade at this point. It can go either way, and unfortunately then that puts that battle onto ice, and it will be up to Pride then to close that gap down to Burgess. But we've seen what this traffic can do, Josh. I mean, 1 minute you can have the pace over someone else, but unpredictability and classes in front of you, that can completely change that scenario up, as we look at Caritas on the back of Shivnov in the number 19. Brilliant bits of camera work also going down. The heli cam needing to be worked overtime to try and keep up with this. And of course, it is going to be a little three-way switch around as well, as Banfield spots that opportunity generally as the third car in the train. you kind of get a bit of an advantage of drivers having a battle in front. Does he have a little look-see on the exit of DuPont as well? Did take a very shallow line in. Might actually open up that position that he gained back as they drag down to T1 once again.
No, absolutely, just compromised his line just a little bit, and now he's stuck. Now Banfield will be compromised with the GT4 on the outside, but getting a slightly quicker into T1, not quite getting the cut back. Left having to lift off just a tiny bit to avoid contact, and that is going to allow Banfield to pull a bit more of a gap. Oh, a lot of overspeed from Leffer there going into the next corner, but avoiding contact once again as we're watching Corentin Burgess, our current race leader, trying to basically run away from Cody Pride, and Pride will be looking to make back that time once again after narrowly avoiding an incident by the skin of their teeth.
Yeah, it's all about that consistency now, making sure that, if you're the driver in front, you're nailing every single part of this track, not giving advantage over. As soon as that slipstream becomes available to the cars trailing you, you're going to now be playing life on hard mode, and every single, apex becomes a defense zone, and that then opens up the opportunities to cars behind as well. Lucas Rummel in the number 23 for the GT3, still having a look. Mike Noble here in his mandatory place, it feels, when it comes to Cup cars. He still leads things away. He's 1.8 seconds ahead of Macaulay, and he's going to go and split the GT4s that make way for him to come through. We saw those flashlights going down. Map the flashes, I feel like, is mandatory in a 41 car race. And these GT3 Cup cars are quite a beast to try and tame without other traffic in front of you.
No, absolutely. One thing I noticed when driving these for myself was that these things still use the road car electronics, which means that if you get the braking slightly wrong, or if you start steering a little bit under braking, a lot of the time what can happen is the ABS kicks in so aggressively that you essentially lose all brakes, which a track like Paul Ricard isn't the end of the world. You might pick up a bit of a track warning penalty, which obviously they are very much rife around here, but obviously you're not going to exactly hit anything, as we see James Parker coming down right onto the back. And that is Karsten in the number 22, Alexander Karsten. That is just closing that gap down and opening up a bit more of an opportunity to think about making a move. Is he going to dive down the inside? He's not quite close enough for that just yet, but if he kind of keeps this up, and obviously the GT4s ahead as well starting to come into play for the Cup cars, this might allow Parker just that opportunity that he's been looking for to get by. And GT4 car.
Oh, this is a brilliant place for him, isn't it, Josh? He's that GT.
Oh, no.
James Parker having to peel off the track there to avoid the exit of the GT4. Does a good job to keep himself in. And look at this, that door just closes, and he has to go for a bit of a different route round. Hopefully that's not going to pick him up a warning. He might have had to also just change the way that he was throttling through there, and the sim might not have given him anything there. But you've done it once, you can do it again, and I think that battle is going to get itself there too. GT4's battling for position as well. Gleason and Jolly, as the GT3 Cups come through, they make some space, and they'll continue their fights together, although not for the same championship points.
Oh, absolutely. You kind of got a feel for Parker at this point. I know for those of you who are joining us for the British GT Monday Championship, there was at several points Parker was looking for a really good position, but then the GT3 is kind of separating him in his battle, between whoever he was fighting with. And that happened at multiple occasions, so he'll be having yet more flashbacks, hoping that doesn't happen again too much, despite having three car crosses on the grid. As we're looking on the back of Mark Whitford's rear wing, looking back at Killian Ryan Mini. Killian getting a little bit racy going into the final turn there, a bit later on the brakes, but that compromises his exit just a little bit, as we see Whitford creating a bit more of a gap. But I don't know if that's going to make Killian into the striking, help him get into striking distance for T1. The GT4 is going to help Killian a little bit, then hinder. And that might just help Whitford create a bit more of a gap onto Killian Ryan Meenan.
so much going on at the same time on this circuit. We said that cars could go 2 cars wide, they could go 3 cars wide, and that is what we've seen a lot of today. Unfortunately, it doesn't always go the right way, and some drivers have not had the race start they would have wanted. Not the right championship start, I suppose. But it's not over till the checkered flag. Points still up for grabs, and everybody with their heads down and racing. 48 minutes of racing remain here at Paul Ricard. 28 degrees on the track. My name is George Smith, joined in the box by Joshua Devonshire. And of course, we've got Jake doing our camera work. This has been a great series so far, and if you look at that timing sheet, you can just see how close the guys are together across the mark. There are drivers 2/10, drivers 1/10 apart, a couple of seconds in some places. As we look at Parker getting past Carsten, we thought that was brewing up. It was unfortunately put on hold due to the GT4 sort of incident coming onto the Mistral Straight, an incident that Parker managed to avoid, but he has managed to get that move dialed in and executed as the 888 then gets underway to try and maybe catch up to the likes of Macaulay and perhaps even Noble. Noble and Macaulay getting very close together as well, as 3/10 then separate them as they go over the timing line. Mike Noble with a mirror full of Joe Macaulay, and the blame Mike Jones, number 18. This is what we want to see. We want to see Mike Noble having some contention, and Joe Macaulay looking to bring us that entertainment.
No, absolutely. It's just amazing seeing these guys get pushed right to the limit. You see them in other championships, and these guys just giving it their all. You know, I don't know about you guys, but I look at these pro splits and just wish that I could be as quick as, like these guys are on a different level. There's a reason why these guys are in the split that they're in. I know I say that a lot, but it seems very, very true watching these guys go wheel to wheel. A bit of an update for you guys. Car number 17 has received a 5-second time penalty as well. At least I believe it was car number 17. I might be mistaken. It did pop up on my screen for just a moment. That is car number 17. That is Rublar. And I believe that was for an unsafe rejoin, which resulted in a collision. So that is why that 5-second penalty exists. And it's not what you want to be looking for at all.
And 5 seconds, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but for a lot of these drivers, you mentioned it, Josh, they're in the pro split. They've got some incredible pace behind them, and you don't want to put yourself in any place that you aren't going to get there. As we look at number 11 here of Jordan, pulling out onto the back of Lucas Rummel and making sure that they can try and get themselves past Lucas Rummel on the defensive. You've talked about it many times. We've mentioned it, the Mistral Straights, where you want to really plan that move. So kind of back yourself up to a point where you can get right on the tail end of the car in front, use the slipstream, and be able to pick your line wisely and not get thrown off by that tough right-hander of Cygnus.
No, absolutely. It's such a difficult console. You're carrying so much speed going into it. And as we've seen several times in qualifying, and it's getting very, very close at the back of Rommel there. But obviously the slipstream effect is at its strongest the closer you are. But as we saw in qualifying, it's so easy just to lose the back end, especially in these Porsches, especially when you're carrying the extra speed from the slip as well. And looks like Focho is going to get the move done, but running a little bit wide potentially. I'm not entirely certain on that line myself, but it's going to amount to a better exit potentially, getting the car straighter a lot sooner. And
there's definitely 2 lines out of that double right-hander, isn't there? And sometimes it looks like slower in, faster out, carry momentum at points, but drivers here having to sort of plan that to be either on the defensive at the same time, set yourself up for the exit is always the mindset that you come into it. And it's always a masterclass to be able to watch these pro split guys. And the Valkyrie Esports car getting themselves up into P3 temporarily in their class. That's exactly what you want to be. That's the position that you want to be. 43 minutes still on the clock to drive this out. And the Macaulay versus Noble battle in the Cup cars is still keeping us on thin ice. I mean, less than a car length separate the two of them now as they make their way down to the final two corners. And, Joe McCauley just letting Mike Noble know at every opportune moment that he is hot on his heels and wants to take the race victory here in class.
Absolutely, just making his presence known, and could also be playing the Jaws theme through a loudspeaker as he's just getting closer and closer, with just waiting for that opportunity to happen. A little flick of flame coming from the back of Mike Noble's car, heading down into T1 on the downshift. So much to like about these cars, especially to drive. They're so much fun. As we're heading down, McCauley will be taking a quick look on the inside, but thinks a little bit better of it. There's not really the space for it, and he was a bit too far back, but that has just left the opportunity open. Just trying to get a better exit heading onto the Mistral, and as we've seen so many times over, that could be a place to make or break. And he lost a little bit of time going through there. Just wasn't able to carry as much speed as he liked.
A little bit of a slidey boy coming out, and Joe having to try and catch his drift. That has cost him a bit of time, but a couple of tenths better than putting it into the wall.
Oh, absolutely, and still 42 minutes of the race left, and not a whole lot of space to make up onto Mike Noble, as he'd be literally into the back of the car, and that's obviously what you want to avoid. Very late on the brakes and just about catching it, and very, very well done. I mean, these cars, it must be said that Stick was a little bit of a slide for Mike Noble. That's going to allow McCauley a chance to try to get onto the inside, and that's the opportunity. Just talking about going side by side, going down into the next level.
Noble with a great line coming out there, though. Even though he made that mistake, or what we thought was a mistake, sets himself up for the drive up to hold that inside line on the exit. And that's exactly where Mike Noble's putting himself again. You're going to force Joe to go around the outside. And coming into DuPont, they're going to have to just tuck back into formation to come through. So a nice bit of defense coming out there from Mike Noble, showing that he's got a couple of cards in that playbook. Doesn't just lead out front and struggle when it comes to pressure. We know that pressure makes diamonds, and these two drivers are absolute stellar examples of that.
No, absolutely. I thought for absolute certain that Noble was going around. So to even catch the car, let alone keep the position, is so impressive. You see McCauley with a bit of an overspeed coming out at the first chicane. It's not going to quite be close enough, but Mike Noble having to be defensive, moving his car to the center of the track, trying to take the inside line. McCauley, a little bit of a tap on the rear there, but not enough to really cause any damage. And again, McCauley finding himself in the same position as the lap before. Can he maximize this turn? Can he maximize the exit onto the straight? And I don't think he quite has. He's fallen back a little bit compared to where he was, but we'll have to see what that position is going to be in just a moment. I have also been informed that there's a 15-second time penalty for car number 577. I'm not entirely certain why that is, but I will find out for you as soon as I can.
Great bit of driving again from the master of Mike Noble, almost forcing McCauley to underspeed himself, slow himself down to avoid a contact, and just puts himself in a place that he then holds off on losing out to a slipstream advantage to the car behind. The number 18 of Joe McCauley is still hot on his heels, yapping like an angry little terrier, and the 1-2-3 is trying his absolute best to just keep the likes of McCauley at bay. This will play into the hands of James Parker, though. If these two continue to scrap it out, just watch out for that 888 Coach Dave Academy car coming through. James Parker will be loving this. If he's seeing it on his Delta screen, he's going to just keep an eye out on that. And up at the front in the GT3s as well, it is another battle for P1 that is starting to develop. We said that Pride needed to just focus, get into the slipstream eventually of Quarantine Burgess, and exactly what's happened. The PPR Esports #1 right up behind will pull to the left side down the Mistral straight, pick up the more ideal line for the right-hander. I think that Burgess is going to just have to settle in behind. Has lost out the advantage there, but now just going to have to keep the pressure on for the drivers behind, as Rommel also chasing down Jules Sky right behind. This is a three-way battle to come out for that P4 that, these drivers need to just hold on to. The car behind, we said it before, in the three-way battle, can generally get a read on the two cars in front, can pick a more ideal line to come through, and just let them do the work in front. And it looks like Rommel going to try and maybe get bullied out here. Sky alongside is going to take that position off of Rommel. And, not quite yet. They are going to stay side by side, but the inside line is going to go out to Sky. Who outbrakes who? And together they go through brilliant driving coming out from Sky. And GT4 is making sure to get out of the way, but they stay alongside Rommel with a great exit out from DuPont as Fushaw goes into the pit box. Not quite sure what that pit stop would be for at this stage, but it is going to hand over that battle to Rommel and Sky, and the two of them need to make sure that they can work together to catch the likes of Pride and Burgess in those top spots.
Yeah, that isn't going to happen if they make contact. There's a little bit of a door tap from Rommel and Sky there. Rommel still managing to stay ahead, and at some point Burgess has also gotten back past Pride as well, and at this point, Rommel and Sky, the last thing that they need to be doing is having a fight, because they just need to catch up to the cars ahead. They can't cost each other this much time, and still half an hour of the race to go. They definitely have the pace to do it. They just have, as you say, George, they have to work together. Looking on the back of Burgess, we see Cody Pride. He's getting the overspeed. He's Burgess moving across the track to try and break the slipstream. It's not quite going to be enough. They're going side by side, going down into Sigmas. Burgess taking not the most ideal line, but kind of is able to capitalize on that because Pride has to go a little bit wider. Caritas with a drive-through penalty. That's another thing to also consider as well, a bit further down the field. Just looking at my orders, and that is Rommel and Sky making contact.
Josh, you can predict the future. I think at this stage, you said it's not what they needed to do. They needed to almost work together, and I think Sky going to give that position back. Yes, you see Sky pulled over to the exit of Bruxelles there. And, coming down into the right-hander of Cygnus. The speed was there. Sky wanted to have a look. And, just a little tap on the rear end. Luckily, with all the runoff that is available here due to the track being used for a lot of car testing, no contact with the wall. And that means that damage would have been slightly less. Cars coming together, always something that can break on a GT3 car. But better than slamming it into a wall, I suppose.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the last thing you need is terminal damage. As we've seen Ryan Meaden finally trying to make that move onto Mark Whitford. Going down into Sturgis. He's got to have the inside line. Whitford is got to take a wider line, potentially just letting Killian have it. There's no point in trying to defend when you are that close to another car, because that is just asking for basically a repeat of what we've just seen. But again, that 5-second time penalty will be playing into Whitford's advantage. It means he doesn't need to get back through. Technically, I mean, he'll want to. No driver wants to be behind another. But it allows a little bit of breathing room at the very least, as we've seen some of the cars coming into the pits. And Jules Sky getting past Rommel, and at this point, just trying to chase down Cody Pride. But that's going to take some doing at this point in the race.
It is indeed, and these two cars might slightly be a bit damaged. Rommel with a great slipstream here, going to go and almost look like a bump draft was going to go down at that pace. But I think that Rommel isn't quite able to, maybe they are working together here at this point. It's a little bit of bump drafting to try and catch up to the leaders, because Rommel was certainly not pulling out of that. And from our camera angle, they were getting pretty close together. Not quite sure if Rommel's car is slightly impacted from that damage. The top end speed maybe not quite where it needs to be now, and unfortunately we'll just have to wait and see how that progresses. But Sky has managed to get past again, did give the position back earlier after the initial contact. Stewards will still be looking into it nonetheless, and perhaps for Rommel just about self-preservation, knowing that still 34 minutes to go, and if you are slightly damaged, you just need to be careful of what you're doing with your GT3 car.
No, absolutely. As you say, a little bit of damage can go a long way, especially if it's affecting straight line speed, and that's exactly what I think some of these guys are starting to find out bit by bit. You have Caritas. Caritas picking up a stop-go 30 penalty. I haven't been told exactly what that is for, but I will check and see if there's anything there. But it could also be just due to track limits. Around this
speeding in the pit lane even? I mean,
That is another
that could
point.
also just be an allocation.
That is a good point because I believe they were serving a penalty beforehand as well. So that is quite a potential possibility. But looks like they will get that move. Actually, they were already ahead of Hilicalio, and they will be pulling a little bit of a gap. It's Cody Pride once again on the back of Burgess. Burgess held up a little bit by that Cayman in front going into Sigmas, but the Cayman will get out the way fairly swiftly. Cody Pride having to take a little bit of evasive action there. But still plenty of opportunity to catch up bit by bit. Traffic is really going to start coming into play at this point in the race. There's cars pretty much on every part of the track. If you look at the track map, it's so saturated. And right now, anything can happen at any point.
Anything can happen at any point. That is for sure. That is kind of the name of this series at this point. So you cannot wait. You cannot be caught out sleeping. You need to be in the right place at the right time. And these drivers have all been putting on a pretty good show for us as viewers. So a big shout out to all of you guys in the live stream chat, all of the support, all of the love that you bring over to Racing Club International. If you are enjoying the stream here tonight, don't be scared to smash that like button, give us a subscribe, join our Discord channel if you want to get involved with the racing, and we'd love to see you out on track sometime, wouldn't we, Josh?
No, absolutely. We have so much going on at any given moment, and as I said to a lot of my friends as well, my friends that worried, they're not quite on pace. It's like, don't worry, we cater for all skill groups, and if you feel like you're not quite on pace, you sure will be, with the experience of racing impacts just like this one, and it's just a whole lot of fun as we're seeing Mark Whitford trying to get that move back on Killian, just getting it a little bit wrong, pitching Killian into a tiny bit of a slide, not enough to send him round. And
living up to the team name, right? Of Side Max, and going a little bit sideways, a little bit scary in that double right-hander. And look at that drift. Okay, I give it a 6 out of 10. I'm impressed, mostly with being able to correct it. Normally goes the other way. You talked about it. It's got an engine in the wrong place, or in a weird place, I think you said, or a strange place. Not the wrong place, the right place. And also the additional weight towards the back of the car. When it goes into one of those positions, so easy to loop around, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. As I said before, the back end can act kind of like a pendulum. But I'm okay. A bit of a theory here. I reckon if that had been a GT3 car, I have a feeling that the back end would have gone around completely. Obviously, without having traction control, I think that the Cup cars are designed to be a little bit more forgiving in terms of slip angle and a little bit easier to drive. As we're seeing Pride looking a look on the outside of Burgess making a stop, which is interesting because there was really kind of, other than fuel or tires, there's really kind of no reason to stop. But this is what we were talking about at the start of the race here, George, is that strategy, where there's no mandatory stop, strategy is going to play a very, very important part.
I mean, we said that there might be a need for some fuel to go in. And some of these drivers might just be staying on the side of caution, being able to get to the checkered flag. I think it's a difficult race to do, pushing it to the limits the entire time on the limiter, and being caught out, running out of fuel towards the end is never going to be an ideal situation. So I think some of the drivers just erring on the side of caution, as we see. Is that Mike Noble that came into contact there?
I think that is. Yes, that would be Mike Noble.
With Zoe, who they've kind of come together, big drive around coming through, and that surely is going to change up the standings in the Cup cars, as Mike Noble then needs to make the chase down. So it is a big change up, in fact. Parker now in the lead for the Cup cars. Carsten in second place in class, and of course Macaulay sitting in third place, which is a little bit different from what we saw when it was Joe Macaulay versus Mike Noble up at the front. But James Parker, we said it, you got to be careful of where this little monster slips out from. Talented driver, talented personality in the esports scene, and certainly a real asset in the ACC community. great to have him racing through here today. And the Coach Dave Academy 888 will love the fact that they are currently in a position that they could take a victory here at Paul Ricard in the opening round.
No, absolutely. It's always great to start a season on the right foot, and that is exactly what he is looking to do. Bit of a gap to Karsten as well, like a full 3 seconds according to my delta at the moment, at least the delta on the screen. So, yeah, that's a fairly healthy lead at this point in time, but as you've seen, there's so much action so far, and a massive kind of, you got to give Jake some props for keeping up with everything on the cameras, because Jake is but one man, and this is a lot of cars.
Yeah, big shout out to our man behind the cameras, of course, and our whole team of live stewards who are spending their time in that, I like to call it the basement. They don't get a nice view like we do from the top of the comms box. Barking orders and a lot of stress in trying to just make sure that all situations are handled fairly and everybody gets a look into what has happened out on the circuit.
No, absolutely, and a bit of an update for the battle for the overall race lead, by the way. Sky being in P2, still... Actually, what is the gap between Sky and Pride? Because this is potentially one pit stop away from... making this race very interesting indeed. How far up the road is Pride? Pride is a fair bit up, but with the right or in some respects wrong interpretation of traffic, that could play in Sky's favor quite massively.
Shinov going to have a look on the outside of Seredi coming into Cygnus. They give each other some room, and Seredi manages to just hold off that attack from Shinov in that number 19 behind. Of course, we saw how many moves have been planned out through the exit of the Mistral Strait out through Cygnus, and it's all about just planning where you want to get that move done. GT3 Tin Top Racing, there's no push to pass, there's nothing more than you versus the other cars in class. You're all in the exact same cars on the circuit. Of course, normally in these GT3 races we see a whole host and variety of cars on the circuit. Jules Sky into the pit box with a slightly battered looking Porsche, going to be making their exit coming out as the 601 drives on to the maybe going to just park it up right at the end here, going to do whatever they need to do in the pit stop. But for Sky, that is going to put that battle with Rommel also on hold, as they're going to just peel further and further away with 25 minutes to go left on the race clock.
Absolutely, and I can't remember if Rommel made a stop earlier, so that might just be the mother of all undercuts right there if that is the case, but we will find out what happened to that battle later on. I was listening to Shinshov, just GT4 going a little bit wide there, but Alexander just trying to get back onto the back end of Seredi. This is obviously the GT4 between them going down the Mistral Strip, but now we can pull into the tunnel of thinner air to get that little bit of extra overspeed. I don't think it's going to quite be enough, but it's a case of what is going to be the closing speed going down into Sigmas. The brakes taking a slightly different line, but both cars are going to get through absolutely okay. But there's a trade of GT4s ahead that is going to have some kind of effect on this battle for P3. The last stop of the podium so far provisionally, considering that there are cars that have stopped and are yet to make some, if the trend is going that way.
Not where you want to be if you shouldn't have. You pull out on the left, you see a GT4, you go right, you see a GT4, and it looks like it's caught Seredi out as well. So the dance behind continues. Shinov going to have to go around the outside of that second to last corner. Not going to be a place to be able to do so, and will carry some nice speed and momentum out through the exit of DuPont. Quite wide though, as those track limit warnings will be flashing up there. Alexander Shinov just a little bit set back then after the last sector. So much pressure coming in, so much traffic to deal with at the same time. Josh, it's all a mental game at this point. It's all about trying to get the best on one of the other drivers, Alvarez. And I believe that would be Vita going side by side as well, as the 105 and the 221 just go through Cygnus in what would have been a great screenshot if I had my camera ready.
No, absolutely. And as you said, when it comes to mind games, so it's a key point I kind of wanted to kind of bring up just for a minute there, is that we've been going for so long now, and that there's some cars that have and haven't stopped. And from a driver's perspective, if you're a little bit further back and you're fighting with a car that has stopped, and you don't necessarily know that they have, therefore you also don't know what state their tires are in or how they're feeling in the car at this stage in the race. And if you haven't stopped, how your car's handling, and a lot of different cars in a lot of different states and a lot of different speeds on track at the same time, all racing together. Jolly picking in the 332, picking up a drive-through penalty, as well as we see Kingston Lee, and that is McNoble getting a little bit out of shape behind the GT4 there.
Not an easy car to keep in a straight line at the best of times, and this will certainly be at the end of a race stint. But Noble does manage to just keep himself composed and poised, and keeping the car in the right direction is always the ultimate win after a situation like that. But so much traffic to deal with, and you can just see in a straight line, these Cup cars still hold their own against the GT3 variants behind them. And, at the same time, it's just a harder car to deal with in the corners. So that's where all that aero advantage comes in to the GT3s. The restrictor in place, of course, to try and mitigate some of the raw top-end power that the Cup car has. But it's still an absolute beast in a straight line. And eventually, Sky will get past Noble then. Of course, they're not fighting for position in class. There's no need for them to be scrapping it out. And that move will get done in a safe place.
No, absolutely. I'll just be slowing them down, and that is the last thing they want. As you see, Alexander Shinchov, Shinyov? I'm sorry, I'm butchering that. The number 19.
Alexander will have to get back to us. I think it's Shinov, but going so wide they had to pay to get back on.
No, absolutely, and that's just cost yet more time to the number 4 as well. And we saw the number 19 go a little bit wide through DuPont, and that's where we initially saw the time loss. But it's a lot of work to make up, but still 20 minutes to go, and not an impossibility.
So, I mean, we'll start to see, I'm sure, some pit stops coming out from our GT3 cars, maybe even the Cup cars as well. When it comes down, the race pace that these drivers have been pushing at is absolutely crazy. And I'm sure down the Mistral Straight, you're not looking to dial back on your engine mappings. You're using your fuel loads, as we look at Macaulay on the back of Carsten temporarily before peeling out to go alongside, hopefully to get up into P2. Going to be on the ideal line for the end of the Mistral Straight. And Macaulay will switch places up into 9th place overall, second in class. And I guess class is what counts at this point. And when you're on the podium, being a little bit higher on the podium, always going to be a win for you as a driver.
No, absolutely. Anything at the top 3, but if I know these guys' mentality, like at this level, I think at any level even, if you're a racing driver, you don't really want to settle for P2, even when it's a seemingly an inevitability. I got my words out that time. But James Parker is a fair bit ahead, which is why I mentioned that. That is, I believe, a 15-second gap. So unless Parker has to pit for whatever reason or has some kind of incident before them, I mean, it's not completely out of the running for Macaulay just yet. Macaulay could still catch up to the back of that AAA Coach Dave Academy Porsche, but again, we'll just have to see. Anything could play out. Again, look at the track map. There's a bit of a clear bit of track on the Mistral Straight right now, but everywhere else is so saturated with cars of all 3 classes, and it's basically a big old jumble mix of 3 different colors on the grid at the moment. But see, Kingston Lee is looking down onto that will be the back of Gleason, and this is like 5th place within the GT4s. So still looking to progress up through the field, and that is the Cup car, a very brightly coloured Cup car. In fact, looking onto the inside, the number 14.
Very, very brightly painted indeed. Good for visibility as Ertan goes through in the number 14. Like you said, very bright and dashing color. Gleason, though, is on the defense. Can feel Kingston Lee breathing down their throats. And the number 742 here, just trying to hold off, trying to break that slip. You see him peeling off onto both sides of the onto the Mistral straight, trying to just make sure that no slipstream advantage is there. Kingston Lee not taking to the bait, just kind of sticking to a line that they feel is more comfortable. And so far, working out for Gleason in a good way. That slip got broken. I'm not sure how many times you can really change lines down as straight. I think I've had this discussion multiple times. I think it's coming into a braking zone that you don't want to be switching up lines to do anything. But I think down a straight away, drivers kind of will extend all that they can, and knowing that they want to try and negate some of that slipstream effect, well, they're going to be picking lines that slightly non-conforming to the way that you normally see guys drive. But at the end of the day, got to do what you got to do. Quarantine Burgess alongside Banfield here, trying to go the long way round out the exit. And what a drive coming out there from Burgess. Has managed to look at this replay coming in. Bully as slight little tap actually comes out. Has to correct, does Banfield. But that has certainly changed the way that they could have taken that left-hander. Burgess going to just leave them in the dust, but not too badly with the slipstream. That works out for Banfield. You can just kind of sit in that slip.
No, absolutely, and great assertion of track position there from Burgess as well, making up the space after that stop, obviously, and that's why Burgess got set so far back. Obviously, they came out the pits just behind. They were our race leader. It's also worth noting, and we're looking at again one of our race leaders, Sky, going up to the back of Fouchot, and not quite able to make anything happen towards Sigmas, but big train, big train of GT4s, and it's going to allow a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a dot up there, but Sky will make their way through. And I think that move is as good as done. I don't think there's any real way for Shaw to really kind of make that back. A little bit of an angry flash. You see Killian Ryan Meenan going a little bit too wide onto the inside curbs, hurting the anti-cuts just a little bit and just unsettles the car. Looks like he was almost, I don't say he was forced over, but I think he was being quite cautious on the car on the outside. But I think that's the number 56 of Hilicalio. Just being a little bit cautious as the 95 GT4 moves out of the way to allow the two cup cars through, and Killian is going to take advantage of a better exit onto DuPont, heading down towards T1. They are side by side just about, but it looks like Killian's just inching ahead. But it all comes down to who's braver on the brakes, who can get that. Hilicalio does have the shorter inside line, but then that does switch back. Now Killian has the inside line, and that is just going to be enough to inch out ahead of the 56, and that move is then done.
I love that move that was just done by Killian Ryan Meenan. Perfectly timed, and made sure that they put themselves into a place that got the exit more ideal for themselves. Not about the entry, not about the mid corner, but about how you exit out. Cody Pride in our number 1 Porsche, currently living up to the car's numbering and sitting in first place. Lucas Rommel in second, and Seredi sitting in third place for the GT3s. But it looks like Pride having a bit of a nice drive, not too much contention for this position, and just having to make their way through the traffic in front. And that's about as busy as it seems to be for the number 1 at this phase, Josh.
No, absolutely. He's had a fairly despite the start, once in first place, just a fairly kind of almost relaxed so far, but also like quite a relaxed race. But I was just about to say, actually, George, I wonder how that car's feeling right now. It's been going now for an hour, and there is no way that those tires feel as fresh as, say, someone like Burgess, who made the stop earlier on in the race. I think Rommel made a stop at 1.2, so there's no way that car is feeling as fresh as the competition. And I'm wondering, is it only a matter of time until that first place is hunted down? 25 seconds with 10 minutes to go. I don't think it's going to be the case if Cody can keep that car out, but we don't know the fuel usage. We don't know how the tires are feeling. We don't know exactly what the strategy is on Pride's end. But again, this is what just makes this type of racing, this length and this distance, is what makes it so interesting. And I don't think there could have been a single class of car that would have made this any more interesting, George.
Absolutely not, Joshua. I mean, right now, just having these three cars out on the circuits in their different classes, all Porsche manufacturers, of course, for the Porsche Masters Cup, just a really cool event, a really cool idea. Big shout out to everybody on the background side of Racing Club International, all the admins for putting the hard work and effort into getting these kind of events arranged. This is so much fun to come out and be watching as we see Sky giving a little flash of the lights, just letting Parker know that they are making their move to get by. And of course, Parker just in a bit of a field here of GT3 normal car classes, in his cup car, and just loving the way that things are going. The 888 has had a nice and clean race, has managed to just avoid any of the altercations that took place beyond the opening couple of laps, and that's what it's all about, just settling in. But back onto that, just a big shout out to all the crew in the background, of course, the lovely camera work being done here by Jake and Josh joining me in the comms box. This is just what we do. This is what we love to do. So a big shout out to everybody behind the scenes, and to you guys in the chat. Thank you very much for coming through and tuning in and supporting our Monday Porsche Masters Cup Round 1.
No, absolutely. It's always great to spend time with everyone. We all share the same kind of passion for this kind of thing. I think it's easy to say it both in real life and in the sim. And it's why we're here. It's why we do what we do. Okay, I mean, just making the way around Andy Bodman. Obviously, two different classes of cards. Pretty respectful from Bodman just to kind of give the space and to kind of just allow Killian through. It doesn't cost any of them any time at all, as we see the 577 currently having a bit of a scrap with, I believe that is the 420. No, it's not the 420. That is the 420. Sorry, so that's a 577 just getting through, but both cars do have a time penalty. That is also going to allow, that is Burgess getting through past those GT4s as well, and Burgess will be trying to hunt down to try and progress up that top three. I believe Rommel is currently in P2, so Burgess will be looking for that, as we see Gleason taking a bit of a look on the inside of DuPont. He's going for it. The 420 does leave the room on the inside, and the move does get stuck. We're heading down into T1, and the 420 does have the opportunity to kind of get on the brakes a little bit later and just try to make the overtake happen. Again, I don't know if it's going to happen. He thinks a little bit better of it, and that those cars are going to settle into those positions.
I mean, they are going to definitely benefit from the fact that there are some time penalties in front. I think Van Aken in that 420, not as much, but Gleason certainly wants to just keep the pressure up and try and stay as close to the number 577 or just close down the delta, where they need to. But 20 seconds to that 577 means that even Van Aken getting into this with 5 seconds, they just want to kind of work together to get more points. But it will definitely go more in the direction of the 420 or the second portion shot, as we view this from the Helican. Looking at Gleason down that Mistral straight onto his rear-facing camera, and Joe Gleason then not even needing to break the toe for Van Aken behind, just a better exit coming on to Mistral, and that has put them in a position that has allowed them to just, but since the braking zone, the test of bravery is going to yield different results. And on the brakes, does look like Van Aken is looking to see if they can do a little bit more. GT3 coming through, and drivers just holding their line. This is where you will see the difference between the car classes, the GT3s versus the GT4s. And for the GT4 class, just to talk about that, Boardman leading things away in class and doing a good job at that as we look at Alvarez on the back end of another cup car, as there's just so many different cars in class in one shot. I mean, look at that shot looking back from this, looking at Olaf Leffe in the 308. You can just see a variety of Porsches in the background, and I love it.
Absolutely, and I don't think we'd have it any other way, really. Actually, that's a good point. Ryan Gill might be a bit more partial towards the Lamborghinis, but actually, I do wonder, just out of a sort of morbid curiosity, the Super Trofeos versus Porsche Cups. That sounds like it could be a lot of fun, but that's another conversation for another day. As we're seeing Olaf Leffe, he's on the back of, I believe, that is Whitford with the British GT banner at the top of the windscreen there, and massive respect for that one. And Leffe is chasing down Alvarez as well. Whitford will move out of the way, and that's a little bit of work that Leffe has to do now to catch up to the back of that 105.
7 minutes to go on the race clock now. And if you haven't put it up into your high heats and started to just put the pressure onto the cars that you've got the opportunity to get through, then you aren't really racing out here. And this is where it all goes down to count. Can be lost in the very closing phase of the race. So you do want to make it to the checkered flag. You've talked about it before, Josh. Drivers are struggling to just make sure that they've got the grip levels to make it to the line, managing their fuel and making sure that they don't need to have any unnecessary time added on to the clock, trying to stay within the track limits, try and stay out of the steward's books. It's a lot to try and do whilst racing with 41 cars on the grid, albeit not all in the same class, but we saw them take to their qualifying in their classes, and then from there we saw the race just go down, and now we've just got a mixture of cars and classes all around the track, but they're all still fighting out for those championship points within their class, and every week that will be the case, won't it, on a Monday?
Absolutely, you always want to maximize the amount of points that you're getting per event. I mean, that's why we're here to kind of compete and compete. These guys will. I don't think it's possible to be a racing driver and not be at least a little bit competitive. As much as a lot of people do this for fun as well. And Andy Boardman, I don't want to say it's a commanding lead with Pike, very close behind as well. But Boardman very comfortably in front there, it seems. A lot of experience. You know, he has done the Monday Championships before with the British GT, and that experience really kind of coming into its own there as we're on board with Joe McCauley now. He is the...
Oh, James Parker is disconnected, it seems, because McCauley then in the lead for the Cup car class at this point, with Karsten sitting in second and Noble sitting on that final podium position spot. Unless he's dropped down further, I don't see him on the timing sheet at all.
I think you might be absolutely correct. I think he is disconnected. Another update as well, two in one. Cody Pride is currently in the pits, as is Lucas Rommel. So they're currently doing a stop. So it might have been that the fuel just wasn't quite there, or the tires weren't quite there, and that is going to allow Burgess a little bit of breathing room. I don't think it's going to be enough for Burgess to catch up, though. Coming round the back of DuPont, I do believe that Pride will be out of the pit lane beforehand, but that might hand second place back to the 666. We'll have to see as we cross the line. I'm not entirely sure where Rommel is. Rommel is still in the pit, so yes.
Rommel's stationary.
Yeah, so Burgess will retake position 2, and has lost some time to Pride at some point along the way. Rommel exiting the pit lane now, and narrowly avoiding two battling GT4s going down the pit lane. But That's what I was talking about earlier, though. The pit exit does just spit you out onto the racing line, and that will put Rommel right behind the number 95 GT4, the Cayman. I believe that is the RK9 Motorsports, but
I mean,
still,
all the GT3s have pretty much done a pit stop here. I mean, the Cup cars I don't think have had to do the same thing, but the GT3s certainly have had to plan around that strategy to go into the pit box. But this could be a last couple of laps that adds some upsets into the stories across the field. And these drivers are all pushing it to the limits as we see the 191 and 221 go side by side. A little bit of contact coming in there, but the pass still being done. Maybe a little flash of the lights to say, hey, mate, that felt like a bit of push to pass on my side. And move being done regardless, getting through on that racing line, Motorsports 191. So right now, James Parker still parked off in the pits. I think he's managed to get back into the race here, but perhaps having some controls locked until we'll have to just see. He has come back in though.
yeah, but it looks like he is last in his class at the moment, which I can't imagine he'll be too happy about. I mean, I definitely wouldn't be, especially when you've been leading the race for so long now.
I mean, the fact that he got disconnected but still comes back in, you know, that just goes to show that there's an element of level-headedness, I think, that a lot of sim drivers forget about. You know, it's all about just making sure that you do what you can do, and sometimes it's not in your court. But I know that I've been in positions like that, and I've gone straight to bed, Josh.
Oh, 100%. I always say if you can stick something like that through to the end and, you know, as you say, return to the server and just keep your head down till the very end, then that's something that to me is more respectable than actually finishing the race with the win. As we see Vincent Valentine with a drive-through penalty. I'm not entirely certain what that was for, but there's so many things it could be at this point with track limits on this track the way that it is. But yeah, it was said from start to finish. It's been so much action. It's very uncertain as to where to actually look. The 191 still Stancio still defending against. Actually, no, I don't think that is defending against. I think they've actually gotten past Vita. Macaulay with Karsten literally a few car lengths behind as well. This is the closing stages for the fight for P1 in the Cup car class. And Noble not too far behind them either, but right now it seems to be kind of a two-horse race between Macaulay and Karsten. Macaulay doing a great job of keeping it really consistent all the way through, keeping their nose clean all this time. They've been going now for an hour and a quarter, so 1 hour and 15 minutes, 75 minutes total. And we are in the closing stages of the race. Less than a minute now on the timer, heading down the Mistral Straight, and seems to be there's going to be enough of a gap to break the slipstream as we see Cody Pride still in P1, and I think you can just about see Burgess right in the background going through DuPont, and that's a big gap, and provided Cody can keep that clean, I think the overall race win is going to go to them. But I dare say Karsten is slowly catching up to the Porsche of Macaulay. Those tires cannot be feeling too happy for either car right now. So who can manage them the best? It all comes down to who can stay level under pressure at this stage. And I don't envy either of their position right now.
Well, I mean, this is a great battle in the Cup car class. You know, with the disconnect coming out from James Parker, then this will be a battle for their class lead. And Karsten looking like they have a great grasp of what they need to do to maybe have a look down towards the Mistral Straight. All about lining it up. Race clock has hit a net 0 on the top. This will be really what these drivers need to get done now. Macaulay going to have to stay defensive up against Karsten as they come on into turn 1. And that 22 rearing and ready to go, wants to have a look, and all about setting it up for the Mistral Straight at this point.
Absolutely, and this is the last opportunity to really do it. The timer has just ticked down to absolute dead zero, so I believe this will be indeed the last lap of the race. So not a whole lot of time now for anyone to make those positions final. it all comes down to this. Essentially, it's so hard to pass in the closing sectors of this track. And has Carsten done enough? Is there enough of a slipstream? As we see Cody Pride, he will be crossing the line. He will take the race win overall and for the GT3 class. You see the checkered flag next to the name there on the left-hand side. That means that position is now locked in. And I imagine Burgess will not be too far behind. In fact, they are crossing the line themselves right now. But onto the battle for the Cup class. Andy Boardman winning their class as well, the GT4 class. And now the last thing to be decided is the Cup cars. And this is the battle we're on board with right now. The 95 RK9 Motorsport moving out of the way. Just does not want to get involved with this battle at all. It does slow Macaulay up a tiny bit, though. Carsten looks on the inside under braking, but Macaulay knows a bit better. He knows how to defend, and he will defend that to the best of his ability. And both these cars must be absolutely on the limit right now of what they can do. And heading down into the final turn, it is the last opportunity. I don't think that Carsten's going to be quite close enough, and that will mean that without the run out of the exit, and that hasn't quite happened, it's a very, very tight battle, but Macaulay will take P1 for the Cup car class. A little flash of the hazards in celebration there. That was a very, very, very tight last closing laps, and that's a job well done from everyone, I think.
Little bit of driving coming out towards the closing phase of that race. So Pride locking in P1 in the GT3s, followed up by Burgess in second place in that 666. And then Rommel in the number 23 takes home third place on the podium. Down in those Cup cars, it was Macaulay in that number 18 versus Carsten in the 22. And then, of course, Mike Noble will round up the podium in that 1, 2, 3. And looking down the order then to our GT4s, Andy Boardman with a classical great drive coming out in that number 69. My favorite racing number of all time, takes home P1. We've then got Pike, and that will be Andrew Pike for OTL Racing in the number 57 to sit on the second place of the podium. And then Keisma in third place for the GT4s. What a great round of racing that was. What a great opening it was for the Porsche Masters Cup here at Paul Ricard. Great racing circuit, allowing all of these race cars to have a bit of fun out on the circuit. And we got to see some awesome moments. I think a big shout out to our broadcaster, Jake, who managed to catch all of that action. A big shout out to, of course, my co-commentator, Joshua, as well. It was quite a mental thing for us as well to just try and keep up with. But, I mean, I can't wait for the next round, Josh.
Oh, absolutely. If this is the opening round, and I must admit, Paul Ricard is not one of my favorite tracks. I think the friends I hang around with and my team certainly know that my views on this track, but it has provided some amazing battles to watch as a spectator. And I think it's one of those tracks that is better as a spectator. But if this is the benchmark for moving forward in this championship, then bring it on, I say. Very, very much looking forward to next week, and it's going to be great, George.
It is going to be great. So if you guys you want to join us again for more Porsche Cup action, round 2 taking place at Donington Park on April the 26th, round 3 at Kyalami on May the 3rd, Suzuka on May the 4th, round 5 at Silverstone on May the 17th, and then rounding up our 6-round series at Spa on May the 24th. Plenty of Porsche action to come. I'll be back on Thursday. I've got some action with Teko on Thursday nights doing the GT4 Cup, which again, just a good bit of racing, good bit of fun. So if you want to join us for that on Thursday nights, I'll be there doing my thing as well. But to all you guys in the chat, you guys have been phenomenal. Thanks for all the support. Thanks for all of the likes. And to all of our drivers, an amazing drive coming out to Masterclass for the Porsche Masters Cup Round 1. We'll see you soon.